Wasting money on cures. Forgot how to fix myself. They say that time is free. Then why is it so precious? Oh, I'll save memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. Time is running out. Time is running out. Lately I've lost my track. I've sailed the deepest seas, hoping to find something to bring back better times. Oh, I'll save memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. But time is running out. 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 Time is running. Time is running out. Time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can't be over. They can't be over now. Time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can't be over now. Time is running out. Time is running out. Time is running out.
Evening all, it's Jim here. Welcome to the second in our series of 4 live streams for BTEC National Business Unit 6. And well, you'll be relieved to hear this is a shorter session than last night. Last night was session 1 of 4, where we dived into a new exam style case study, cost less stores, or CLS, and started to look at what it takes to try and get as many marks as possible out of the 88 for Unit 6. And tonight we build on what we did last night, but we don't have to spend so long going through the case study. Hopefully it's familiar to you. So if you joined us last night, by the way, all these sessions are recorded, so you can go back over the previous sessions. We went through the case study and considered how best to use the case study data. Tonight, we're going to focus on 2 more of the assessment focuses, or assessment foci. Is it foci? So that's AF2 and AF6. And just a quick reminder of what we did last night. So we looked at AF1 and AF5. There were 12 marks going for both of those two. It's the same mark scheme for AF1 and AF5. Well, we've got another 24 marks on offer for AF2 and AF6. And this is where the examiner says, well, has the learner applied the key principles of management, the specification content, even better in the context of the case study, and used it extensively and rationalized it in the points and the issues and the recommendations developed. So a really important part of the spec, a good opportunity for you to impress the examiner by demonstrating your knowledge and understanding and being able to apply what the specification is about, which is management, the principles of management. So that's what we're going to cover in this session. Session 3 tomorrow, where we'll take a look, again, a relatively short session, looking at how to make recommendations and suggest alternative approaches. And lastly, in session 4, we'll look at some ideas on how to structure your report, activity 1, and the presentation activity 2. So just a quick reminder of how these assessment foci are organised in Unit 6. There are 88 marks. Don't forget 44 marks going for activity 1. That's the report. At 44 going for the presentation. So don't overdo the time on activity 1. We're looking tonight at AF2 and AF6. And it's the same mark scheme, 12 marks for both. So if we have a look at the mark scheme, we were looking, weren't we, last night at what it takes to get a merit, and even better, a distinction. Well, we found out that to get a merit, you just need to be in band 3 for each of these AFs, or assessment foci. And so band 3 will be 7 to 9 out of 12 times 2, because it happens twice. Here you're providing relevant management principles and linking them to the context, the case study, and the business goals. If you can squeeze into band 4, that is great news. And what the difference is, it's comprehensive coverage. You really go to town on the key principles, the key topics, and you rationalize them and you build them in. You embed them in your issues and recommendations. And most importantly, you link them to the business aims, the business goals. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to have a look at this in the context of the CLS. A question coming in from Mukadid is band 3 a merit? Yeah, basically, we saw, didn't we, last night, that if you can get into band 3 in each of the 8 AFs, that will get you around about 53 marks, which would easily get you a merit. I say easily, be 3 or 4 marks more than the grade boundary for a merit. Obviously, if you can get a few band 4s, that makes it even easier. Even easier. So let's have a look then at AF2 and AF6. Now, a little bit of introduction, and then we're actually going to have a go at exploring some of the key management principles in our CLS case study. And I think this is important because in part A, don't forget, as we mentioned last night, this is your opportunity to really get under the skin of the case study. You've got a minimum of 6 hours in your school or college, but there's no limit to how long you can spend preparing and researching and understanding the case study. So take it, do whatever you want with it, apart from working with other people or getting help from your teacher. So lots of opportunity in particular to highlight all the key business terms and make sure that over time you're familiar with what they are, but most importantly, how they apply to the case study. And even more importantly, how they might link to the achievement of the stated aims and goals of the business. So a great technique to do. First time you see it there in part A, but why not continue to look at it, is to highlight all the key terms. As we're going, I'll pick up some questions. Quick question: are we allowed any notes in this exam? No. Thank you for Karen for replying to that. So you can write as many notes on your copy in part A as you wish. You can do whatever you want with it, but you can't take anything into part B, which is the actual exam. So that's different from Unit 2, isn't it, where you can have those 2 pages of notes. So no notes allowed. So you need to go in really well prepared on the case study. And to be honest with you, that's okay because it's a couple of pages and a few tables. So it's not like it's a magazine to really get under the skin of. Lewis is asking, when is the PowerPoint being covered? We're dealing with that on Thursday in our 4th session, where we look at the structure of the report and the presentation. But actually, we'll also cover it tomorrow because we're looking at how to make recommendations, and I'm going to use one of the PowerPoint examples from activity 2 to help make that point. So hopefully that's useful. So yeah, there we go. I've just highlighted some of the key terms. I was just looking through the case study. This is just one part of the case study, and I was thinking, oh yeah, I need to make sure I know what delayering is. That sounds like it's quite important. There's some other terms there around human resource management, which is a key theme in this case study. Workforce flexibility, subcontracting, performance appraisal appears in the text, so I want to make sure that I'm really on top of that. That's part of the specification. A bit further down, it talks about culture and change, performance-related awards, bonuses, redundancy, labour turnover. So the examiner will scatter throughout the text references to key business principles and management, and the key thing is to make sure you know what they all are. And as I say, having a think about how they link to the business. Somebody's asking, edits by floor, saying, how many sessions have you had so far? Good news is this is session number 2 of 4, but all are recorded. Now, let's do a couple of activities. I thought for the rest of this session, we'll actually get into the case study and dive into some, not all, of the management principles, because that's what AF2 and AF6 is all about, but most importantly, applying it to the case study. So, and this is a great opportunity for me to stick some of your great contributions on the screen as well. Now, our first activity, we'll do 2 or 3 of these, is what I call the application spinner. So what I've done is I've picked a selection of some of the key management principles that are included in the case study. And what I'd like you to do, or when the wheel spins and it chooses one completely at random, is to maybe in the live chat, if you're joining us live, have a go at typing in what you think it is, what it means. But even better, can you apply it? Can you perhaps give me a bit of application in relation to cost less stores? Is there something in the case study which is a good example of this concept? While this is as much fun as for me as it is for you, it's completely random. I've no idea where it's going to land. I'm hoping it's labour turnover, but shall we see? Let's give the first wheel a spin. And it's, oh, there we go. It was nowhere near labour turnover. It's landed on flexible workforce. Big part of the specification, workforce flexibility, flexible workforce, business unit 6. What is that then? What do we mean by flexible workforce? If that appeared in the real unit 6 exam case study, what would you be thinking about what that means? And have you got an example or something from the CLS case study that you either remember from last night or you could make up if you've not seen the case study? I'll stick 1 or 2 of them on the screen here, not necessarily going to pick out the best or the worst, just the ones that are coming in early doors, and I appreciate everyone having a go. So Johnny Walker was the first in, where it's saying employees can choose their hours. Well, that's potentially one part of flexible workforce. It's that's quite a relatively small part of it, but I'll take that as my first contribution for the day. So I'll give you a little bit longer to continue adding. I won't be able to get them all on the screen. Let's listen one from Chloe. I like this one. A staff or workforce that is optimized when it is needed. That's quite a subtle, that's quite a smart answer, that is. That's a workforce, I'll say a staff that's optimized when needed. That hints at the staff being, the number of staff, the amount of time that you have in the business being adjusted to reflect the business needs. And Liz has sort of developed on that. The workforce is flexible. They can work whenever the company or the business needs them. There we go. Superb stuff. 1 or 2 people saying, does it mean employees with a wide range of skills? Well, not really. No, that would be, it's interesting to the business, but that's not what we mean by a flexible workforce. So lots of great answers coming into the live chat. So I appreciate those. I'll have more on the screen. Here's what I went with. So a flexible workforce, what it means is it's the use of what I call alternative working, i.e. not full-time and permanent. So where a business, for example, and in the case of CLS, didn't it? Alicia decided to move to a more flexible workforce. She decided she wanted to employ more temporary staff. So that points to that previous point about having staff when you actually need them to staff the stores at busy periods, in particular, of course, the run up to Christmas. And also, I think she also mentioned some other concepts, didn't she? You maybe come on to. So it's about managing the workforce to meet the need for labour. Meet the need for staff. That's what we mean by flexible workforce. In other words, giving the business a bit more agility. And one of the benefits of that, if you do it right, it can reduce costs, which might link to the objective of improving the net profit margin from about 1.5% to 3%. That's one of the aims, isn't it? But also, it could potentially be a benefit to staff. Staff may find that flexible working, for example, part-time working, flexible hours, that might be something that they're actively looking for, perhaps to juggle around issues like childcare or looking after dependent relatives, that kind of stuff. So flexible working, if done well, can be a benefit to both parties. Well, we've done a good job on that one. Should we do another one? So flexible working has disappeared and it's been replaced by performance appraisal. It's been a while since I had a performance appraisal. It could be tonight, though. Maybe you'll let me know. Let's spin the wheel again. I get so excited by this wheel. It's one of my favourite activities. I can tell you are too. I thought it was going to land on subcontracting. It's just tipped over into 0 hours contracts. Over to you, team business. What are 0 hours contracts? Can you give me a bit of application for CLS if you remember a bit about the case study? Is there potentially an issue with 0 hours contracts, or is it an opportunity for the business? What do you think? I'll give you a little while to have a go at typing into the live chat. Obviously, if you watch on catch up or demand, maybe in a class or just revising yourself, you can always pause this video or just mute me and just continue working through the activities. Some great stuff coming in here. Awesome. Let's put the first contribution I saw. That's some tip-top stuff coming through. Toby was in there saying it's a method of flexible working, flexible employment, where there's no guaranteed minimum working hours. Absolutely right. Now, workers are only paid for the hours worked. Yeah, they are paid for the hours worked. But I think your first point there, no guaranteed minimum, is the key. In other words, you're not guaranteed to be working a certain amount of hours. Lois May going with a similar really good contribution there. You're not contracted to a specific amount of hours. You're called when needed. And that's potentially quite interesting, isn't it? If we're thinking about staff loyalty and commitment and organizational culture and trying to get these stores increasing their sales, we can make a link, couldn't we, between that and a move to 0 hours contracts? Is that the right move for Alicia to make if we want those stores to increase their sales? I'm not sure. It could be. Let's put one more here. 0 hours contracts are where the employee doesn't have a set shift schedule. That's not easy to say, but it's a great point written down. And he's usually called up if he or she would like to work at a certain date. Yeah, exactly. So in other words, the employee doesn't really have a lot of say in terms of when they work or how much they work. So there we go. I think my point is really just drawn on those 0 hours contracts, alternative work arrangements, so flexible working, where the employees have no guaranteed minimum number of hours. Management can adjust their shift lengths up or down flexibly as demand dictates. For example, helping to cover for increased staff absence in a store. Or perhaps even at busy periods. You're doing great on these. Should we do one more? Last one. I promise it's the last one. Then we'll get into some other key management principles. So 0 hours contracts has disappeared to be replaced by bonus. And let's spin the wheel. Let's keep this standard up. Amazing contributions, by the way. Apologies, I've not got everybody on the screen. I'll do my best to get as many on as possible. And it's landed on subcontracting. So that's interesting. What do we mean by subcontracting? Is there something we can remember from the case study that might be an issue? Could be an issue. Now, obviously, we're just going through the key concepts and having a go at revising them. So, but in your spare time or your preparation time after you've seen the case study, start to think about each of these topics, concepts, principles, and think, well, it's the so what question. Is it what might this mean for the business? Does it create a problem? Does it create an opportunity? How might it impact the aims of the business? And that's the way to revise for Unit 6. Great stuff. Let's have a look at what we've got coming here. Yeah, Toby's in again there with a great answer. Outsourcing tasks or projects to external parties or individuals. That's exactly what it is. It's outsourcing stuff for other people to do outside of the business. Johnny's come in with an even more detailed answer, which looks really good. Subcontracting is when the business uses other agencies, for example, to get employees. It doesn't really create a relationship. So this is starting to develop a really nice link, isn't it? It doesn't create a relationship as they may be temporary or are constantly changing. So yeah, subcontracting can be a sort of a difficult thing to manage well. And I like this point here. Subcontracting, you've got some nice examples there. Catering, for example, maybe the store restaurants. Well, I was going to say the store cafes, but of course, Alicia closed them all, didn't she? It's one of her first actions. Where are customers? Where are that knit and natter group going to meet? So, but anyway, she could have outsourced the cafes to a catering business, and we know that they outsource cleaning services of the stores. And of course, a benefit of that is it saves costs, as Anne's pointed out there in the live chat. These are great stuff. Here's what I went with. Subcontracting refers to a business outsourcing. There we go. I've stolen some of your suggestions. Outsourcing specific functions or services to external suppliers. And they are typically specialists. And so do that rather than employing people to actually do it. So, for example, that might help costless stores reduce their store costs. If a specialist is providing the service, they may benefit from things like economies of scale. And it may, therefore, reduce costs, which potentially might help them achieve a higher net profit margin. But also a downside of it, so a bit of balance, is it may result in lower quality. For example, rather than having the store cleaner on staff and the store cleaning team being able to respond straight away, if maybe you've outsourced it, maybe the store cleaning team only come in for part of the day and maybe don't do such a good job. Or security, maybe as not as committed to keeping the store secure as if they were employees. Who knows? But this is the idea. You try to develop the potential implications and build them in to our responses. Excellent stuff. I think we've had enough of the application spinner. Well, we've had enough of it because that's the last one I've got. But you get the idea. So work your way through all the key terms and just have a think. Do you know what it is? And can you apply it? Can you explain that key term in the context of the case? Now, we're going to finish off with sort of 3 mini little exercises here where we just build on this a little bit. What I wanted to do was pick out what I think are 3 key management principles in the case study and just throw it over to you to say, give me some ideas here. Give me some, maybe an insight, maybe even a recommendation. So in other words, start to apply these concepts. Now, it's not the whole case study and it's not every possible issue or recommendation, but it's just going to set us up really nicely for tomorrow night's session where we look at how do you write your recommendations and ideas and alternative approaches. Here's the first one. I've just drawn out a little bit of stuff that covers some of the stuff we've just done there. So, these are Alicia's plans, weren't they? Delayering, flexible workforce. She decided to close the store cafes. She decided to set store managers individual targets rather than everybody getting one big bonus. But I just want to focus on that top one there, delayering, which I think is a really important part of this case study. So over to you. Just one, please. But if you've got time, give me 2. Tell me how delayering might affect, in this case, I've asked you to consider the staff motivation, the motivation of store staff and store managers and potentially others in the business at cost-less stores. Just give me one way in which you think delayering might affect staff motivation, because I think this is a key part of building your report and presentation, is to start to make the links, to start to analyze the implications of some decisions, and that then makes it easier to make recommendations. What do you think? I'll leave a bit of space. So it's just delayering. Obviously, there's a number of things you could consider there. I'll leave a bit of space here on the screen so we can get some of your ideas. There we go. I've got a little box ready for your ideas. What do you think? How might delayering affect the motivation of staff at CELS? I'm trying to link this management concept, this principle of management. So delayering, cutting management layers, cutting out those middle managers. It has potentially positive and negative effects, but in particular, what might the effect be, either positive or negative, on the motivation, which is another key part of the specification? Wow, that's some great answers coming in, and I've deliberately paused because there's lots of people typing furiously. And first into the window there is Johnny's idea. Delayering can be good, so positive implication, as it allows the remaining managers, because half of them have been sacked, the managers to work more closely with their subordinates. And this can even mean that managers and notice employees get more recognition and stay valued. In other words, because there's fewer store managers, fewer middle managers, managers are closer to the shop floor, aren't they? They're maybe noticing more about who's working hard, who's doing well. I love that. That's a brilliant answer. Really good. On the other side, a bit of balance here. Liz is saying, well, actually, this potentially delayering can have a negative impact, because by having fewer people in middle management layers, that could potentially lead to overwork, either for the existing or remaining middle managers, but potentially also to the store staff working in the hierarchy. Now, even better, if someone could, somewhere in one of the responses, maybe mention a motivational theorist, that would be a gold star response, because it just helps emphasize a point I wanted to make about these management principles. I'll look out for the live chat. There could be some people typing as I speak, lots of people joining us. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll stick my 2 on screen, and then I'll leave Liz's on there. Actually, let's stick Johnny's on as well, because I think that was the first one that came in. I'll put some others on the screen. Here's my 2. Keeping an eye out. Yeah, Liz is suggesting Maslow. There we go. I'll stick. It is Maslow, I was thinking, but not just Maslow, but there's my first one. So the point here, I'll go through my two examples in a second. The examiners in the last examiner's report for Unit 6 said the students who made specific use of motivational theorists and applied them to the situation, for example, using, I don't know, Hertzberg or Taylor or Maslow, that added significant credibility and depth. That was a really effective use of management principles. Rather than just saying employees may be less motivated, they actually applied the model. Not drawing it out, but applying it. And that is a great way to really impress the examiner when it comes to AF2 and AF6. So here's my first one there. Eliminating established middle management positions may create job insecurity fears for the remaining managers and staff. In other words, half the managers have been sacked. Is it me next? So insecurity, job insecurity, that's going to potentially damage their safety needs and maybe even their physiological needs. And just by mentioning those words, that basically, physiological and safety needs, that basically implies Maslow, doesn't it? That is Maslow's hierarchy, which previously, because of Terry's leadership over 50 years, they didn't have to worry about. Life was very easy. So this threatening of job security, in particular security needs, I think risks damaging the overall level of employee motivation and morale. However, as has been pointed out by others in the live chat, it could be a great opportunity and therefore it might boost motivation. So I've used Hertzberg here. I said by reducing layers of management, it might provide store staff with an opportunity to take on an enriched job enrichment, more responsibility. Therefore, Hertzberger would argue that job enrichment is potentially a motivator, isn't it? Provided the hygiene factors have been addressed. So Hertzberg would be my motivational theorist there. So that's the point, really. Try to use motivational theorists specifically rather than just talk about motivation in general. There's Johnny's point. On the other hand, so a bit of balance. Fewer managers means there's more stress on the remaining 50% of managers. That is a genius answer because you have manipulated the data. We know from the table that there are 50% fewer managers, but it doesn't say that. It says they've gone down from, was it 300 to 150? Anyway, half of them have gone. But by using 50%, you have used the data. So you're getting AF1 and AF5 too. Awesome stuff. Two more of these. And one of them finishes off on one of my favorite topics. Let's move on to the next one. So we are looking now at culture. Now, when Alicia came in, she said, this business has to change, in particular the culture. Look at that second paragraph. Alicia was concerned the culture had caused the business to become too complacent, too comfortable. She admired the fact the staff were loyal, but she believed the business needed to become a lot more efficient. Why? Because it's facing increasing competition. So over to you. Either give me an internal or external influence on the culture at CSL. So the Unit 6 specification asks you to consider culture, internal and external influences on it. So over to you. What do you think? So our penultimate activity here. Can you either give me an internal influence on the culture at CSL, something within the business, or give me a factor that you think is an important external influence that management will need to respond to? What do we think? Maybe just type in internal or external. I'll give you a little while to type in your answers into the live chat. If you're watching on demand, maybe pause the video and have a think, have a discussion. Culture, I think, is an important part of Unit 6. It's not been examined that often specifically, but we have, of course, included it in our sample questions in Activity 2, I think. So we'll be looking at that tomorrow. What do we think? The culture. Culture is all about the way things are done, how the organization is run, what people do, what they say, all that kind of stuff. Let's stick some answers or suggestions into the screen here. So Ivan Mighty, Aldi and Lidl are opening up. That potentially leads to a loss of customers. due to, even worse, if customers aren't happy with the new store environment generated by Alicia. So that will be an external influence, isn't it? In other words, it's an influence that almost demands that the culture of the business is adjusted in some way, I would say. What else have we got? I'll keep a lookout for some more answers coming into the live chat. Let's stick hands on there. Internal by a distance, isn't it? It's this family, privately owned, running operation of the business. So we know that CLS is privately owned, set up by Terry. He ran it for 50 years, looked after his staff, took decisions for the long term. You can imagine every year was the same. So how predictable is that? That is the culture, isn't it? Very conservative, perhaps risk averse. So you could use those kinds of ideas, couldn't you, to say, well, that's a culture that worked for Terry, but it might not be a culture that will be successful in the future. Why? Because of, as you've mentioned in the chat window, you've got competitors driving change, in particular the fast-growing discount grocery supermarkets such as Aldi and Lidl. So as Johnny's pointing out, here's an external factor there. It's competition. Competition is changing. It's driving the need for cultural change. Excellent stuff. Here's my two. I went with internal, the leadership and management style of Terry. Yeah, he's been in there 50 years, very paternalistic style. The way we do things will have been deeply, deeply ingrained, embedded in how the business operates. You can just imagine what the head office was like, the stores, long-standing employees. It's a wonderfully comfortable organization and business. Be a cracking business to work for, unless you've got an oldie around the corner. And then I went with the external, the competition, which is the point that Johnny and others have pointed out in the live chat. What else have we got here? Let's have a look at Marcin's answer. See, put this one. So thank you for there's a lot of effort going into the live chat tonight. So motivational influences, motivational influences are internal. Yeah, okay. The issue is, the cultural issue is you've got an increasingly demotivated workforce. That's impacting the culture. And there's a very close link, I think, isn't there, between staff satisfaction, stroke motivation, and the culture. If the culture is we're happy, why change? Then you might argue don't change. Excellent. Right, last one of these. This is the last one. Let's clear the screen, and we're just going to have a look at this. Do you remember at the end of the case study, Alicia saying, well, one thing that needs to change, we need to use e-commerce. Well, of course, she came from an e-commerce background, and she wanted to introduce e-commerce. She wants to introduce this idea of a website and an app where customers can order their food, their groceries, and pick them up in store, so not home delivery. But it is going to need a lot of training. And Terry Brown, former CEO, still the owner of the business, is pushed back and saying, no. We don't need this. I'm worried here. This is a significant change that is going to get resistance from staff. So this is change management and resistance. Last activity. Can you give me one way that Alicia could address the potential resistance by the store staff to e-commerce? This is going to tie in really nicely to how we present our recommendations and alternative approaches tomorrow night. So we'll actually use this as an example. But I just wanted to go through this sort of principle of management, this idea of change and how do you overcome resistance to change. Key part of the spec is going to be, by setting up the issue like this, it'll make it easy for us to look at some recommendations, because I'm asking you for some recommendations. So over to you. What do you think? So Alicia wants to introduce e-commerce. Terry's saying, not sure that's a good idea. It's going to be resisted by staff. Can we come up with maybe an action, an approach, a recommendation that helps explain how that might help overcome resistance to change? The principle in this case being resistance, because most employees, most organizations are resistant to change, and therefore we need to find ways of overcoming it. So what do we think? Now there are different models and approaches that say, here's how you do it. but you don't have to necessarily use those. But what you would need to do is to explain how and why this might be likely to work, or why it might be relevant to CLS. So I'll give you a little bit longer. Can you come up with a way in which Alicia might overcome this resistance to change? Johnny's making the case. It's a big change. It's needed. Okay, it is needed. But how are you going to get the business on side? Because Terry's saying they're going to resist here. The store staff are not going to like this. What do we think? Give you a little bit longer. It's quite a hard one to finish on, but I think it's an important one because it goes right to the heart of Unit 6. If we want to be getting those merits and distinctions, we need to be helping the examiner see that we're thinking about the management concept here, which is resistance to change. How do you overcome that? And then even better, coming up with some contextual ideas. There's no right answer to it, but some ideas as to how you might overcome the inevitable and understandable concerns that store staff might have. Okay, I'm going to keep an eye out on the live. Oh, wait a minute. Just when I thought I wasn't going to have an amazing answer on screen, one's appeared. In fact, 2 or 3 have appeared. Let's stick Massan's first. Hope I said that right, Massan. The manager can communicate. So communication is a classic method of overcoming resistance to change. So the manager can communicate with the employees, explaining the vision. Oh, it's getting better. Explaining the vision that Alicia has, making the staff feel more engaged, and therefore trying to sell, if you like, isn't it? Sell the concept, the upside of e-commerce. So perhaps taking a more democratic approach to leadership than the autocratic, trying to create this positive, supportive atmosphere. That is a fantastic response. That demonstrates knowledge and understanding of a method of overcoming resistance to change. It's perfectly in context, and it would be ideal. In fact, I might use that tomorrow night in my example presentation point on this question. I love that. Brilliant. Well done. Liz is saying Alicia could argue that the e-commerce could lessen the number of customers in the store, therefore less work, keeping the queues down. So you can maybe love it. Brilliant application. Love that. You say, look, customers are going to order at home, then just come and pick it up. So fewer people getting in the way whilst we're trying to run our grocery store, keeping the queues down. So everyone's a winner. That's really good. Let's have a look at Ivan's, Wanvan Mighty. This is brilliant. Show the employers financial graphs, ideally the right way around, of how e-commerce can help compete with the likes of Aldi and Lidl by bringing sales up, by helping the store perform better, and perhaps even showing it in a staff meeting. So that comes back to the communication method, doesn't it? So your presentation will say, if it was activity 2, a key recommendation is a series of communications, perhaps meetings, presentations, extolling, communicating, persuading the staff that this is a good idea. Love these. Brilliant stuff. What else have we got there? It's an interesting one. Johnny's taking a slightly sort of left field approach to this, identifying the resistant employees and trying to win them over. So in other words, trying to find the influencers. Is there a never in my store type person who, if you can win them over, then the chances are they might become an advocate? That's really good. Even better, coerce them, saying you're going to do it, otherwise you lose your job. Great responses. What do I go with? Let's have a look. And nowhere near as good as yours. I wrote this on the train on the way up from London, so apologies if it sounds a bit business speak. I said a phased rollout of e-commerce. What I mean by that is start small. So perhaps pick 5 stores out of the 50 and say, right, we're going to try it with you first. So set the system up, take the orders, see how staff respond, see how you need to organize, all that kind of stuff. And then once you've ironed out all the issues and you've got some staff on board, then hopefully you've got some advocates for this, how it's making the store perform better. Then you can start to roll it out a bit quicker. And then secondly, I went with incentives for getting involved. In other words, bribery. So pick the stores, a few of them, and say, right, here we go. If you get involved, there's some targets for the online sales and picking the orders. And by the way, some really nice prizes. And you make the targets really easy to achieve to start with, so that everyone feels as though, what a great idea. Yeah, we'll be the first store to introduce e-commerce, please. We want to do it because we fancy that store away day to Alton Towers or whatever it is. And therefore, the store staff feel very positive about the impact. And therefore, they didn't need to be as worried about the e-commerce impact. And therefore, hopefully that might overcome the resistance to change. I love those responses. Absolutely awesome. Well done. So there we go. We've done 30 minutes or so exploring AF2, AF6. So just to summarize, there's 12 marks going in the presentation and in the report for you bringing out the key principles of management and explaining what they are and how they are relevant to the case study and linking them back to the goals and objectives. So the key things to remember are, in part A, take some time to read it carefully, highlight any terms you're not sure about. Those are the ones to go back to your notes or maybe GTD website or somewhere else and find out what it's all about. Think about what it means for the case study business, so there's nothing when you go back to that same copy in part B that you think, oh, I've no idea what that is. You've done your research, and then start to think about, once you've understood all those key terms, start to think about how they impact the business, linking them to the business goals. If you do that, and you do that consistently in your report and presentation, definitely you're going to be in Mark Band 3, even better, Mark Band 4. And then the icing on the cake is going to be some really nice recommendations and a nice report structure. Would you believe it? Would you believe it? We're going to be covering recommendations and approaches tomorrow for about 25 minutes and then finishing off with report structure in session 4. But for now, that's it. We can rest up. We've done AF2, AF6. I'll see you tomorrow at 6:30 for session 3. Cheers.